Hello, this is Keith Owen. Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about two different ways that we could create pivot tables using multiple tables, meaning like one fact table and in this case 3-dimension tables or lookup tables. We're going to do it a traditional way where we're going to extract data from our lookup tables, bring them into our fact table by using XLOOKUP and VLOOKUP, for example, and then we're going to be adding our tables to the data model, and we're going to create these pivot tables over here towards the right. So our data is basically made up of sales data, and then a product detail data, and then our sales rep detail data, and our customer detail table data. And so our main table here is our sales data, and we have certain columns in here that are going to be linked to these other tables. So in our first example, we're going to be looking to get information from our lookup tables into this main table here. And I'm going to use two different examples of XLOOKUP and VLOOKUP. And our first pivot table that we'll be creating after we extract the data is we want to bring in the revenue by category, which is right over here. So basically we want to sum up all the revenue and break it down by category. Our second pivot table is we're going to be asking or getting the number of orders per customer type, as you can see right over here to the right. So that's what we're going to do. So first of all, what we want to do is we want to, in order to get the category into the pivot table, we need the individual category names. So we're going to create a helper column here. And we're going to get that information from our product detail. So one way we could do this, we could use the XLOOKUP function. Tab into there. Our lookup value is going to be linked to the product ID. So that's our lookup value. And we're going to be copying this formula down. So we want to keep this relative, and then comma, and our lookup array is going to be in our product detail table, and it's going to be the product ID column. So Control Shift down arrow, Control backspace. This we want to keep absolute, so we press F4. And then what do we want to return? Well, we want to return the category names. So Control Shift down arrow, and then we want to keep this absolute also. So you hit your F4 key to keep it absolute. And then we're going to close this out and press enter. And now we got that category. So let's copy this down here. Double click the fill handle. Okay, we got that. Now, in order to get this pivot table, we want to bring in the customer type. So we want to add a column name, customer type, and we're going to get that customer type from our customer detail table, and it's going to be based upon the customer ID over here. So this time we're going to use VLOOKUP equal VLOOKUP. And our lookup value here is our customer ID. We're going to keep that relative, comma. Our table array, meaning where can we find this customer ID? So we go over to the customer detail, and here's our customer type. So we're going to highlight this entire table. Okay, and we want to make this absolute also because we're going to copy this down. Press F4, and then our column index. So where in this array that we just highlighted is going to be the customer type? Well, it's saying we have to count the columns. 1, 2, and then 3. So we're going to type in 3. And then we want to have an exact match. Tab into that. Close this out, press enter, and we got that. So let's now copy this down. Okay. Now, in this instance, we're ready to create our pivot table. So let's go ahead and do insert pivot table. And then we're going to do it, new worksheet. Okay. Now, we want to sum up the revenue. So drag the total sales into the values area. And then we want to segregate this by category. So we put this in a rows column. So as you can see, now we got this information which coincides with this over here. Okay. So now we got that. Now we want to do the other table, which is going to be the total orders by customer type. So let's go ahead and do another pivot table. And all we have to do is we could copy this down, Control C, and then Control V, and then just change this up here. Okay, so what do we want? We want the total number of orders. So let's drag this out here. Drag this out here. And then we want the total number of orders, order ID, into the values area. So that gives us a count of the total number of orders, which basically means it's, in this case, order ID is unique. So it's going to give us a count for every single row in our range. And then we want the customer type. We want to group it by customer type. So bring in that over here. And now we got the same thing. So if we go back here, 2200, so that matches that. So that's one way to do it. Now we could also do this by uh, adding all these tables to the data model. Now we could select the ranges and add this to the data model, but if we don't name our tables or create Excel tables out of here, then we're going to have to rename it into the data model. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's go ahead and create a table, Control T, and let's see, escape. Let's go back here, Control Home. Okay, I don't want to, in this case, I don't want to include the helper column. So I'm going to do this, Control Shift down arrow, and then Control T. And my table has headers. And then let's name this. Remember this when we go into the data model. Our data model tables will be named after what we name it up here in upper left. So let's just call this sales data. Okay. Let's also create tables for this. Control. And let's call this product detail, prod detail. Do the same thing here. Control T, let's create tables. And this is called a sales rep. And then finally, let's do the customer detail. Control A, Control T, press OK. And this is going to be called customer detail. Customer detail. Okay, now let's go back to our main table here. And now let's insert a pivot table, but this time we're going to add it to the data model. And let's go over here, insert pivot table. It asks us, we're going to put it on a new worksheet. And as you see on the bottom here, choose whether you want to analyze multiple tables. Yes, we do. So we're going to be adding this to the data model. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, go through the same steps, and we're going to do an insert the pivot table from all these different tables. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and now, as you can see, I inserted all those pivot tables using the method that we did for this first one. Now, we don't need all these pivot tables over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete these. Just select the columns and delete, and it gets rid of those pivot tables. Let's go back here. Now, again, all these tables have been added to the data model, but if you look over here to the right, you don't see all those tables listed over here. At this, we do, so you have to select all up here, and now we got all those pivot tables over here. But let's remember what I said when we created the Excel tables, we named them. So this is how they're named over here, not only here, but in the data model itself. If we didn't create Excel tables and just selected a range, Excel would default this by calling it range and then a certain number after that. So let's go up here to our data tab, and we want to go over here to the portion where it says data tools in the ribbon. Click on this, and we want to manage data model. Because what we want to do is we have the tables now in the data model, but we need to link them up or make relationships with them. So as you can see on the bottom left here, it's the name of the tables that we selected. And you could also rename these here. If you right click on any one, you could click rename here. And also up here in the upper right, we want to go to diagram view. Okay, now we have all the tables here. Give it a second to reload. Okay, now we're in the diagram view, and it shows all the tables that we added to the data model. Now you could also rename these tables by right-clicking and rename. You could do that there also, just to let you know. So, but now we want to create relationships from these tables. So let's go ahead and move this here. And let's create a relationship between the main table, fact table, with the dimension tables here. So we know we want to, the product ID should be linked up with the product detail table. So you just click and drag and point to the same column in the supporting table. Customer ID should be linked up with the customer detail table. And now we want to link this up here. So we want to take the sales rep ID, click on there, click and drag and point to the same column name. And now we all have relationships. Now they're all linked together. So you could go ahead and save this and then click on close. So once you close out of that editor, you're going to be brought back to your sheet here that's holding the one pivot table now that we have. And now let's create the same two pivot tables using the data model. As you can see over here towards the right, we clicked on all and it shows all these tables that we loaded into the data model. So what first one we want to do is get the total revenue. So let's go over to the sales table. We want the total sales, okay, and we want to group it by category. So let's go over to the product detail table and click on the category and bring it into the rows. So now you can see it's broken down by the category for total revenue for all of it. So now the other pivot table that we want to create is Control C, Control V, and let's change this up. We want to get the total number of orders by type. Okay, so content type. So let's change this up. We want to get the total number of orders. So that's in the sales data. We don't want the sum of sales. We want the count order ID. Okay, but now we want to, instead of the category, let's take that out. And let's go to customer detail and content, customer type. So now we have that. So these are two different ways that you could create pivot tables in Excel, where you have to join multiple tables together to get the information that you want. Hopefully this gave you an idea on working with the data model and also working with a few lookup functions also. This file will be included in the description for you to download and follow along. I want to thank you very much for stopping by today. You have a great day, and I'll catch you on the next video. Remember to subscribe, like, and share this video. Bye now.